The pain arrived on a Tuesday, which Lyra'thex found darkly appropriate, since Tuesdays were already the worst day of the station's artificial week cycle. Her legs simply stopped working somewhere between the morning nutrition dispenser and her assigned workstation in the xenobiology lab. One moment she was walking, contemplating whether the recycled protein paste had always tasted vaguely of copper, and the next she was on the floor, her elongated ears flat against her skull. Every nerve from her hips down screaming in a language her species had no words for. "Well," she muttered to the ceiling panels, "this is suboptimal." The Zerine didn't do pain like this. Their biology was efficient, regulated, predictable. You got injured, your body released the appropriate neurochemical suppressors, and you proceeded to medical attention in an orderly fashion. You didn't collapse in corridors like a malfunctioning gravity regulator. 3 station attendants found her 20 minutes later. They scanned her with their handheld medical units, exchanged glances that she recognized as the Zerine equivalent of deep confusion, and called for a transport stretcher. "Legs?" one asked, professionally clinical. "On strike," Lyra answered. "Apparently they've unionized." The attendant didn't laugh. Zerine didn't really do humor, which was one of many things Elias had tried to explain to her over the past 6 months. Elias. God, Elias. The human engineer with the crooked smile and the terrible habit of fixing things that weren't technically broken, including her carefully maintained emotional distance. They moved her to Observation Room 7, a sterile white space that smelled of ionized air and regret. The medical scanners hummed around her body, mapping systems that were apparently staging a full rebellion. Her internal temperature had spiked 3 degrees. Her hormone levels looked like someone had thrown random numbers into a chaos algorithm. And there, buried in the deep tissue scans, was the thing that shouldn't exist. A cluster of cells. Multiplying. Hybrid. Impossible. Dr. Kethvara arrived with the test results printed on actual physical film, which told Lyra exactly how serious this was. The Zerine only used hard copy for things they didn't want in the digital record. "Explain," Kethvara said, her tone suggesting she already knew the explanation and disapproved of it intensely. "There was a magnetic storm 3 weeks ago. The gravity controls failed in Sector 9. I'm aware of the storm. Things got chaotic. Chaotic is not a biological process. You've clearly never met a human." Kethvara's ears twitched, which might have been irritation or might have been the Zerine equivalent of a suppressed laugh. With her, it was hard to tell. She set the films on the diagnostic table, each one showing Lyra's body from a different impossible angle. "Your physiology is attempting to accommodate genetic material it has no template for. The resulting cellular conflict has triggered a systemic inflammatory response. Your lower body mobility centers are effectively paralyzed by your own immune system's confusion." "How long?" "Unknown. Days. Possibly weeks." The literature on Zerine-human biological interaction consists of exactly 0 documented cases because it's meant to be impossible. Kethvara paused. "You've managed to become a statistical anomaly. Always wanted to be special. The council will classify you as a contamination event." The words hung in the recycled air like a sentence. Not a person with a problem. An event. A thing to be contained, studied, and most likely erased from the record. Lyra stared at the ceiling and tried to move her toes. Nothing happened. Her body had become a democracy, and her brain had lost the vote. "Can I at least get better lighting in here?" she asked. "If I'm going to be a scientific curiosity, I'd prefer to be a well-lit one." Kethvara didn't answer. She was already walking toward the door, taking the impossible test results with her. Elias broke through the quarantine seal on day for using a maintenance override code and what he later described as justified panic. He appeared in the doorway of Observation Room 7, holding a contraband chocolate bar and looking like he hadn't slept since the last time gravity worked properly. His human eyes, so inefficiently round compared to Zerine ocular structures, were red-rimmed and determined. "They said you were dying," he announced. "They exaggerated," Lyra replied from her horizontal position. "I'm just very committed to lying down. Your legs are taking an extended vacation. I don't blame them. The working conditions were terrible. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped beside her bed, his hand hovering near hers like he was approaching a force field. Touch between species during exchange programs violated at least 7 different station protocols, which both of them had ignored spectacularly during the magnetic storm. "This is my fault," he said. "Technically, it's both our faults. Gravity's fault, really. We should file a complaint." "Lyra, don't." She tried to shift position, and her spine reminded her why that was a bad idea. "Don't do the human guilt thing. My body made a choice my brain wasn't consulted about. That's not on you." He sat down in the observation chair, which creaked under his weight. Human furniture was always creaking. They built things that protested. "I brought chocolate," he offered, holding up the bar. "I know it's probably toxic to your species, but I panicked at the commissary. It makes me nauseous." "Oh, sorry. I can. Give it here anyway." He unwrapped it carefully, breaking off a small piece. She took it, let it melt on her tongue, and tried not to grimace at the overwhelming sweetness. Zarine taste receptors weren't designed for Earth's idea of dessert. "Horrible," she confirmed. "Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Give me another piece." He laughed, and the sound filled the sterile room like contraband. Laughter wasn't forbidden on the station, but it was definitely discouraged. Emotional displays complicated the cultural exchange metrics. "They won't let me stay," Elias said, breaking off another piece of chocolate. "I had to tell security I was checking the atmospheric regulators in this sector." "Are you?" "There's nothing wrong with the regulators." "There is now. I've been breathing aggressively. Very hard on the filters." His hand finally settled near hers on the bed, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Humans ran 3 degrees warmer than Zarine baseline. She used to find it inefficient. Now she found it comforting, which was probably a symptom of her compromised neurological state. "What do the doctors say?" he asked. "That I'm biologically impossible and politically inconvenient. Standard medical assessment." "Lyra, they want to terminate it. Study it. File it under mistakes we don't talk about at diplomatic functions." Elias's jaw tightened in that distinctly human way, all visible muscle tension and suppressed violence. Zarine didn't telegraph emotion through their facial structures. It made humans exhausting to be around and impossible to ignore. "What do you want?" he asked. The question hung there, revolutionary in its simplicity. What did she want? Zarine didn't structure their lives around wanting. They had optimal outcomes, predetermined paths, genetic contributions calculated 3 generations in advance. Wanting was inefficient. "I want my legs back," she said finally. "And I want you to stop looking at me like I'm broken." "You're not broken." "I'm definitely broken. I just don't want to be fixed in the way they're planning." He pulled out a battered paperback from his jacket pocket, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. Physical books were nearly extinct on Earth, museum pieces from before everything went digital. "Can I read to you?" he asked. "It's terrible poetry. You'll hate it." "That's the best offer I've had all week." He opened to a random page and began reading about ancient Earth, about oceans that weren't frozen and skies that held actual weather. His voice was steady, warm, and efficient. Lyra closed her eyes and focused on the sound instead of the pain. Somewhere around the 3rd poem, her left index finger twitched. Just once. Barely perceptible. But it moved. She didn't tell him. Not yet. She wanted to keep the small rebellion to herself for a moment longer, a secret between her and her impossible body. The council arrived on day 9 with an entourage that included 2 diplomatic observers, a legal arbitrator, and someone whose job title translated roughly to cultural contamination specialist. Lyra had managed to prop herself into a semi-sitting position, which she considered a significant achievement. Her ears were at full attention, which in Zarine body language meant either alert and ready or about to bite someone. "Context dependent. Ms. Lyra'thex," the lead counselor began, reading from a digital tablet that probably cost more than the entire observation room. "You are hereby classified as Incident Reference XH-924, a biological anomaly requiring immediate remediation." I preferred it when you just called me Lyra, she said. XH 924 doesn't fit on name tags. The counselor's ears didn't even twitch. Professional stonewalling. The genetic material developing in your system poses risks we cannot quantify. Standard protocol requires termination and comprehensive study. Standard protocol also requires asking the person attached to the system. Lyra pointed out. I'm still here. Mostly functional. Definitely opinionated. The cultural contamination specialist leaned forward. She was younger than the others, her ears pierced with small silver rings that marked her as academy-trained. Rebellious, by Zerine standards. There have been others, she said quietly. The lead counselor's head snapped toward her. Severith. 17 documented incidents across the past 40 years. Various species combinations. All classified, all erased from official records. Severith pulled out her own tablet, fingers moving across the screen, with practiced defiance. A Centauri male in 2045. Human hybrid, 11 weeks. Both died. A human woman in 2051. Martian genetic material. Survived but suffered complete neurological restructuring. 3 Zerine, including 1. That information is sealed. The counselor interrupted. That information is relevant. Severith shot back. She has a right to know she's not the first mistake the council has tried to bury. Lyra felt something shift in her chest. That wasn't physical pain. 3 Zerine. Severith met her eyes. 1 was your genetics professor, Dr. Kethvara. The room went silent except for the atmospheric regulators, humming their endless mechanical lullaby. Kethvara, who had examined her with such clinical detachment, who had spoken about contamination events like they were data points, had been 1. Where's the human? The counselor demanded, clearly trying to regain control of the conversation. The engineer, Elias Chun. Facing his own tribunal, one of the diplomatic observers answered. Human Command has charged him with genetic sabotage and reckless endangerment of allied species relations. Genetic sabotage, Lyra repeated. Is that what we're calling it when gravity fails and 2 people collide in a storage bay? The circumstances are irrelevant. The outcome is untenable. The outcome is mine. Lyra's legs still weren't working, but her voice worked fine, and she used it. My body, my impossible biology, my choice. You don't have legal standing to make that choice, the counselor said. Zerine reproductive rights don't extend to unauthorized genetic combinations. Then maybe Zerine reproductive rights need updating. The counselor stood, preparing to leave, with all the dignity of someone who'd never had their legs stop working out of sheer biological confusion. The procedure is scheduled for tomorrow morning. This conversation is concluded. This conversation is just starting, Lyra said. And I'm not going anywhere. Literally. My legs don't work. So unless you plan to drag me to medical while I shout about council cover-ups, you might want to reconsider your timeline. Severith was smiling, just slightly. Her ears tilted at an angle that suggested she was enjoying this far more than her job description allowed. The counselor left. The observers followed. Only Severith remained, hovering near the door. The data files are corrupted but recoverable, she said quietly. If you want them. If you want to know what happened to the others. Why are you helping me? Because 40 years ago, someone should have helped Dr. Kethvara. Severith's ears flattened briefly, a moment of genuine emotion breaking through professional composure. And because I'm tired of pretending that erasing problems makes them disappear. She left the data chip on the diagnostic table and walked out. Lyra stared at it for a long moment, then managed to shift her weight enough to reach it. Her fingers closed around the small device, just as her right leg cramped violently, reminding her that rebellion came with a price. Worth it, she told her malfunctioning nervous system. Her leg didn't answer, but somewhere deep in her restructuring biology, she felt the impossible cluster of cells pulse once. Like agreement. Dr. Kethvara arrived at midnight, when the station skeleton crew was minimal and the surveillance systems cycled through their maintenance windows. She carried a medical kit that looked like it had been assembled from 3 different species equipment, which probably violated at least a dozen safety protocols. Lyra had managed to haul herself into a wheelchair by then, her legs occasionally responding to commands like unreliable employees. "You told the council to go to hell," Kevvara said, setting the kit on the exam table. "I told them to reconsider their timeline." "Very different." "No, it isn't." Kevvara's ears were doing something complicated that might have been approval. "The data chip Severith gave you. You read it." "Most of it. The parts that weren't corrupted into digital gibberish." Lyra wheeled herself closer. "You carried a human hybrid for 16 weeks. 17 weeks, 2 days. But who's counting?" Kevvara opened the medical kit, revealing syringes filled with substances that glowed faintly in the dim light. His name was Marcus, asteroid mining engineer. Terrible sense of humor. We were stationed on Ganymede during the resource surveys. "What happened?" "The council happened. They gave me a choice that wasn't really a choice, and I made the practical decision." Kevvara's hands were steady as she prepared an injection, but her voice wasn't. "I've regretted it for 40 years. I will not watch you make the same mistake. This could end your career. My career has been treating symptoms while ignoring diseases. I'm due for a change." She held up a syringe filled with something that looked like liquid starlight. "This is adapted from human prenatal vitamins, Zarine cellular stabilizers, and some Centauri immune modulators I'm not technically licensed to prescribe. It might kill you." "What are the other options?" "The council's procedure, which will definitely kill what you're carrying and possibly sterilize you in the process. Or doing nothing, which gives you maybe 3 more days before your immune system tears itself apart." "You really know how to sell a treatment plan." Kevvara almost smiled. "I've had 40 years to think about what I should have done differently. This is my second chance, through you. No pressure." Lyra held out her arm. "If I die, make sure Elias knows it wasn't his fault. He's very committed to human guilt." The injection burned like cold fire traveling through her veins. Her ears flattened involuntarily, and her legs spasmed hard enough to nearly throw her out of the wheelchair. Kevvara caught her, steadied her, waited. "That was unpleasant," Lyra managed. "It gets worse before it gets better. Human medicine is barbaric but effective." Over the next hour, Kevvara administered 3 more injections, each one triggering a different cascade of biological rebellion. Lyra's temperature spiked, dropped, stabilized at a point exactly between Zarine and human normal. Her heart rate became erratic, then found a new rhythm that the monitors couldn't quite classify. "Your body is rewriting its own code," Kevvara explained, watching the readouts. "The hybrid cells were trying to exist in a system that rejected them. Now we're teaching your system to accommodate instead of attack." "How do you teach cells?" "Very carefully, and with drugs that aren't approved by any known medical board." Somewhere around injection 5, Elias appeared in the doorway. He'd clearly broken quarantine again, and this time he wasn't even pretending to check atmospheric regulators. "They're moving up the procedure," he said, breathing hard like he'd run through 3 sectors. Tomorrow morning became tonight. Security is coming. Kevvara swore in formal Zarine, which was impressively creative. "We need 4 more hours minimum. We have maybe 20 minutes. Then we improvise." Kevvara grabbed 2 more syringes. "This will either accelerate the stabilization or put you into toxic shock. Possibly both." "Your bedside manner needs work," Lyra said. "I'm a research scientist, not a therapist." Elias moved to Lyra's side, his hand finally, properly taking hers. His palm was warm and steady and human, all inefficient emotion and stubborn loyalty. "I never meant to break you," he whispered. "You didn't break me. You just made me complicated." She squeezed his hand, feeling her fingers respond with almost normal strength. "And I was always going to be complicated." Kevvara administered the final injections in rapid succession. Lyra's entire body lit up with sensation, pain and relief and transformation all cascading together. The hybrid cells pulsed once, twice, then settled into a rhythm that her restructured biology finally, impossibly recognized. Her legs moved. Actually moved. Both of them. "Well," she said, staring at her traitorous limbs in wonder. "That's new." Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. "Security," coming to collect their contamination event. Elias looked at Kefvara. Back exit. Maintenance tunnel, section 4. It connects to the transport bay. You've planned an escape route. I've had 40 years to plan an escape route. They made it to the transport bay, with security 14 seconds behind them, which Lyra considered optimistic, given that she'd only been walking again for approximately 6 minutes. Elias hot-wired a maintenance shuttle, while Kefvara blocked the bay door with an emergency lockdown that would take security at least 10 minutes to override. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's chair, her legs trembling with effort but functioning, watching Europa's ice plains spread below them like a promise of escape. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked as Elias punched coordinates into the navigation system. "Anywhere that isn't here," he said. "I'm open to suggestions." "Titan has relaxed quarantine protocols," Kefvara offered from the back. "And terrible wine. But you can't have everything." The shuttle lifted off, just as security breached the bay door. Someone was definitely filing paperwork about this. They flew in silence for 20 minutes, the black expanse of space surrounding them like permission to breathe. Lyra felt the hybrid cells shift inside her, settling into a pattern that was neither growth nor deterioration. Just existence. Waiting. "It stopped developing," she said finally. Kefvara leaned forward, checking the portable medical scanner she'd smuggled aboard. "Cocoon state. I've seen it in the records. One of the Centauri cases. The hybrid biology reaches a threshold and just pauses." "For how long?" "Unknown. Weeks. Months. One case lasted 3 years before." Kefvara stopped. "Before what?" "Before it resolved itself. The host survived. The hybrid didn't. But the host was fundamentally changed. Different metabolism, altered neural patterns, extended lifespan. Neither fully their original species, nor fully the other. So I'm becoming something in between." "You already are something in between." Elias guided the shuttle toward Titan's approach vector, his hand steady on the controls. "The tribunal wanted to court-martial me for genetic sabotage. I told them it wasn't sabotage if nobody planned it." "How did that defense work?" "Poorly. I'm officially dishonorably discharged from the engineering corps." He glanced at her, that crooked smile appearing. "Apparently breaking quarantine 6 times to read poetry to a classified biological incident violates multiple codes of conduct." "Only 6 times. I lost count after 8. Lyra laughed, and the sound came easier now. Her throat adapted to expressing things the Zareen medical texts classified as neurological inefficiency. "We're fugitives. Technically, you're a biological contamination event, and I'm a disgraced engineer. Fugitives sounds more romantic. Humans and their romance. It's impractical. So is this entire situation, and yet here we are." Kefvara's communicator chirped. She checked it, her ears flattening. "The council has issued a formal recall order. All 3 of us. With a side note that I've destroyed 40 years of professional credibility for a statistically insignificant outcome." "What will you do?" Lyra asked. "I think I'll go to Titan and drink terrible wine and write a paper about biological possibility that will get me banned from every academic conference in the system." Kefvara's ears tilted forward, almost playful. "At my age, scandal is refreshing." They docked at Titan Station 3 hours later. The customs officer took one look at their identification codes, saw the council flags, and carefully decided she hadn't seen anything at all. Plausible deniability was a universal constant. The station was smaller than Europa, dirtier, less regulated. Perfect. They found temporary housing in a section that catered to contract workers and people who asked fewer questions. One room with a window overlooking Titan's methane lakes, furniture that creaked when humans sat on it, air that smelled like recycled hope. Elias sat beside Lyra on the narrow bed, their hands properly intertwined now, no protocols between them. Her legs were sore but functional, her body still rewriting itself in ways the medical texts couldn't predict. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted. "I don't know if that thing inside you will ever wake up, or what it'll be if it does." "Neither do I. Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me. But I've been scared for weeks. I'm getting used to it." He kissed her forehead, Careful and human and warm. I never meant. I know. Stop apologizing for the magnetic storm. It's not your fault gravity failed. I could have walked away after. But you didn't. She shifted closer, feeling the hybrid cell's pulse once, a rhythm that matched something neither Zareen nor human, but entirely hers. You stayed. You read terrible poetry. You broke quarantine 6 or 8, or however many times. That was a choice. So was keeping it, he said quietly. Your choice, even when it paralyzed you. Especially because it paralyzed me. Lyra stood, testing her legs, walking to the window. Europa was visible in the distance, a pale dot where her entire controlled life had existed, where the council still classified her as a mistake. I spent my whole life being what I was designed to be. Perfect genetic contribution, optimal career path, zero deviation from the plan. Then my body made a choice without asking permission, and for the first time, I got to decide what that meant. Elias joined her at the window, his reflection overlapping hers in the glass. Two species, impossible biology, terrible timing. What does it mean? He asked. It means I'm free. She placed his hand and hers together on her abdomen, where the cocoon state maintained its patient existence. It means whatever this becomes, it'll be free too. No genetic committees. No predetermined paths. Just possibility. That's terrifyingly human of you. I learned from the best. Kethvara appeared in the doorway carrying 3 bottles of Titan wine that looked like they'd been aged in someone's engine compartment. I'm toasting to poor decisions and biological miracles. Join me. They sat together in the small room, 3 fugitives drinking terrible wine and watching Titan's eternal storms rage across orange skies. The council would keep looking. The diplomatic corps would file endless reports. The records would be sealed and classified and eventually forgotten. But Lyra's ears were tilted forward in defiant hope. Her legs were functional, and inside her restructured biology, something impossible waited patiently for its moment. To breaking, she said, raising her glass. To breaking. Elias and Kethvara echoed. They drank. The wine was absolutely horrible. It was perfect,